This show is a part of the podcast network of the Walled Garden Philosophical Society, an international community of philosophers and seekers dedicated to the pursuit of truth, wisdom, virtue, and the divine, wherever they may be found. To find out more, go to thewalledgarden.com. Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Searching with Seneca. Now in this episode I'm just going to be quickly focusing on the last couple of verses of letter number 12 on old age, because he brings up an idea that I believe we've talked about before from Seneca's philosophy that I think is worthy of repeating as he does a few times throughout his letters. And that idea is basically that, you want to value the words that somebody is saying and what those words mean, not necessarily the person. The person comes secondary to the value that is found within the words that they speak. And we'll explore this idea a little bit more once I've read what it is that I'm going to read here. So just before I read it, I should mention that he's starting this passage by quoting Epicurus. So he says, quote, "It is wrong to live under constraint, but no man is constrained to live under constraint." Of course not. On all sides lie many short and simple paths to freedom. And let us thank God that no man can be kept in life. We may spurn the very constraints that hold us. Epicurus, you reply, uttered these words. What are you doing with another man's property? Any truth, I maintain, is my own property. And I shall continue to heap quotations from Epicurus upon you, so that all persons who swear by the words of another, and put value on the speaker and not on the thing spoken, may understand that the best ideas are common property. End quote. Alright, so I'll start by talking about the quote that he gives from Epicurus, because I really like this. It is wrong to live under constraint, but no man is constrained to live under constraint. This obviously is an idea that is talked about often by the Stoics and especially by Seneca, which is that, look, if you don't like the rules of what it means to be an honorable person or the rules for how to live well in this life, there are multiple ways that you could actually leave this life, and you could do it on your own terms. It's kind of a really dark proposition, but he suggests, hey, listen, if you don't like the rules of this life, that's all right. You can leave it, and that's literally the laws of this experience that we're all having here. But it also reminds me of the story that he tells, maybe in a future letter, where he discusses the young Spartan who is taken as a slave, and on his first and when he is first ordered to do something, I believe it was to take a chamber pot out or something like that. He basically runs against the wall while screaming, "I will not be a slave," and he cracks his head on the wall. And the lesson that Seneca takes away from that is that this is how close we are to true freedom, meaning we can always choose whether to do something or not, because we have the very powers of death in our hands. So again, this is a really dark idea, and one which is almost uncomfortable to talk about, but it's a sound philosophical principle, meaning that literally we do have that freedom within our hands to always order our own lives and to not be a slave to those people around us, or even a slave to ourselves and our passions, right? And so anyway, moving on from that, the most important point that I want to get at here is just this idea that truth is common property. I think that Seneca hits the nail on the head here, because so many people focus way too much on the speaker ahead of the words that they're speaking, and so in doing that, they actually lose the value that they could have from those incredible words or valuable lessons from that person, because they have a certain view in their mind of what that person is, and that stops them from seeing the truth. But Seneca is saying, don't focus so much on the person, focus on the truth that they speak, because even if you don't like the person, you can still love the truth, you can still love the lesson and what it teaches you and what it guides you to do and act like in your life. Now, of course, you can say that, somebody's bad example is worth pointing out, and that's very true. If somebody's not being a good example, you might want to say, well, I don't want to be like that person, but somebody who gives off a bad example can still speak very, very wise words. And that's not necessarily the case with Epicurus, of course, but he's trying to point out here that even though I'm a Stoic, that doesn't stop me from seeking wisdom wherever I can find it. Just because I consider myself to be a part of this philosophical school does not keep me from seeking the most wise words, the most truthful words from the people who I can study. And I think that is a really key idea that Seneca tries to push throughout all of his philosophy. And I think that it's great that he pushes this because, if you focus on the person first, then you can quickly fall into an ideology. You can quickly fall into groupthink, whereas if you're focusing on the wisdom first, then you're going to catch wisdom that you wouldn't have caught otherwise if you were focusing on the person. And, you might think, okay, well, what would it mean if I was focusing on the person first? Well, I'll give you a classic example, which I've given multiple times before, which I think is very, very useful in explaining this very point. In a Facebook group, I saw somebody post in a Stoic Facebook group, they posted a quote from Jordan Peterson. And very quickly, the discussion went from discussing the quote to, well, is he a Stoic? And to me, I was kind of thinking, it doesn't matter whether he's a Stoic or not. That doesn't matter one little bit. That's not nearly as important as whether or not this quote is valuable and what it means and what it can teach us and what it can help us with in our lives. Whether he's Stoic or not does not mean anything because truth is common property. Truth is everybody's, right? It belongs to everybody. And if you focus on the person and whether or not they belong to your tribe, as opposed to focusing on the truth of what they say, then you're missing out on that common property truth, which other people will catch and you will not see it. So anyway, I won't riff on any longer about this point because I think that ultimately it's a simple one to grasp and it's one that Seneca will bring up many more times in his letters. And I think it's useful for us to think about this, right? So when you're going about your study, when you're going about seeking wisdom, just remember that the truth is common property. It belongs to everybody. No matter where you find it, it's yours to keep and it's yours to discover. So I think that that's a valuable lesson for especially all of us in this modern age where tribalism is making a triumphant return and we seem to be valuing the person first as opposed to the message or the truth behind the message. And I think that this is such a key idea that really will help a lot of us to focus on what's important and what really matters. And so anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'll talk to you next time.